Well, and with that, it's another Thursday. And so, you know what? It's been kind of a hectic week, hasn't it, Nick?
It's definitely been one for the books. Yeah. Seems like
Uh,
we're trying to one up each other to see how much we can actually not have happen, and yet it seems that we've never once escaped with that being the case.
yep. But luckily, not playing politics is here. Again, I'm Alexander Keaton. I've got my Rio, Nick Bradshaw here. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
So far, so good. Just trying to figure out what all the world is going on. Let's see. Since we've met, since the last time we were here, Texas has decided to sue the four states, and the numbers are everywhere, but 17 states at last count seem to have joined, as well as members of the Pennsylvania legislature and the Georgia legislature have joined, they haven't joined the lawsuit, but they filed amicus briefs as saying that the Supreme Court should take that hearing. And all of a sudden, the news media seems to have discovered that Hunter Biden's a thing, and that China has spies in our country and has been infiltrating congressmen like Swalwell, which seems like someone missed. But lots of things have happened in the what 5 days since I guess it's now officially 7 days since we talked last.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the Godfather Part 3 on this, and there's a scene where Andy Garcia's character is speaking to one of the representatives that you find out later is the actual guy behind all of the scheming and planning against the Corleone family. And he says, "Oh, you don't understand politics, do you? But you understand, a gun." He said, power is the bullets. I'm paraphrasing here. Power is, the bullets. Politics is knowing when to pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, that's, I believe it's finance is a gun. Politics is knowing when to pull the trigger. That's what it is. Look, I don't care what side anybody's on. I think we've dedicated ourselves in this show to maintaining our beliefs, sure, but not just trying to turn this into, one side or the other. But I don't care where you look at this. The management, the distribution, and the capability or the malfeasant capability of people. And here's the thing. It's not like these stories weren't around before. It's not like it's just now breaking and we've never heard of this before. And people say, well, wait a minute, where was this? These stories were all out in the open before.
Yeah.
They were just not being covered. And that's why it feels so weird when you see people say things now like bombshell story from 2018. And that's the concern that I guess that I have, is that it literally just shows, if you want to see where, again, as we've talked about on this show, fake news is not, hey, today is Wednesday, not Thursday, ha, ha, ha. No, it's controlling and manipulating the channels with which the message is getting out and who the message is targeting. So the question that has to be asked is, who's making those decisions? I don't look at someone like Jake Tapper as possessing the capability, the power, or the reach. Now, does that go to Jeff Zucker? Does that go to people that are at the higher levels? Does it go to government? Does it go to beyond that? I don't know. But I think the question has to be asked. Are we really occupying a space where, we just stick our head in the sand and say, I can't hear this? I mean, it just seems like it's almost a willful ignorance.
It is. Well, there's an old proverb. You cannot awaken those who pretend to sleep. Right. I mean, that's where we're at. It's like you can't look at it when they're like breaking news about Hunter Biden's like like you just spent 3 months telling people that wasn't a thing. Not even 3 months. You spent the last 2 months telling people that wasn't a thing, and now you're telling them it's a thing. Like, how is it even? We have fallen into the freaking Twilight Zone. And my fear is that there are legitimately half this country is okay with it. That's my fear. Like, so little behind the scenes thing here. My wife flat out believes that there are a ton of people out there for whom because their only news is the media, they just assume that's truth. They think that they're saying that they're actively speaking the truth, that they're desiring to get the truth, even if they're not perfect, they're at least trying for it. And she believes that they're going to see all this rapid mind changing, right? And they're like, but hold on, didn't you just tell us there wasn't anything going on with Hunter Biden? And now there is. And there isn't any election interference or irregularities, but now they're going to start seeing it. Like, there's all these things that are going to come out. And they're like, but you just spent 2, 3, 4 months, 5 years, etc., telling us these things weren't real, but now that they are. And that people are going to sort of be awoken from this. My fear is that I believe they're only pretending to be asleep. I don't think that the vast majority. My fear is, let me rephrase it this way. My fear is that there are half the population that they are listening to the mainstream media. They do believe them, and this whole they're not going to. It's not that they're not awake. They're pretending to be asleep. They are willfully going with the narrative. They have chosen the narrative over the truth. That's my fear.
Well, I think you do something. I think what it is it's. I don't recall exactly where I heard it, but my uncle,
you better recall, and you better recall right now.
Exactly. My uncle used to use the phrase when he was teaching me to work on my golf swing. He would talk about paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is that for many times when you have paralysis by analysis, you look at a situation and of course you can overanalyze it to the point that it obviously paralyzes you because you overthink it. I think that another way to do something, when you look at people and making choices and you look at the influences, whether it's through advertising or propaganda or persuasion, whatever tactics are used, you have to ask yourself the question, and on an intriguing level, let's just, people in a culture, what drives people to make a decision? I mean, if you could understand what drives preference, and there are those in the statistical world that'll talk about methods and measures that you can take to build, metrics on how to really see preference. But I mean, if you could do that, you could literally warp, opinion. That I think is something that's out there. But I want to circle back by simply saying this. One of the ways that you can restrict somebody from making a decision is simply by restricting their access to making a choice. If you give them no choices, they will pick what you give them. It's like telling a 4-year-old you need to either brush your teeth or put on your pajamas. They get empowered to make a decision, but they're both options that you want. The other way I think you paralyze someone in a decision-making process is what happens to me every time when I was a little kid and we go to Baskin Robbins. And you'd walk in and see all those flavors, and it was like, okay, well, which one do you want? Or better yet, because I'd always go with the chocolate and peanut butter. You got to get the winner. If it was like to go to Toys R Us when I was a little kid, and it's your birthday, you can pick out any one thing you want. I mean, I was paralyzed. I would freeze. I'm like, I'm going to pick the wrong thing. I don't know what it is. So I bring this to the point of the media to say, we're so inundated. It's so ubiquitous. It's so constant. It's so unrelenting in every possible way that we actively disengage.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if it's effective or if it's accurate or if it's truthful anymore because so many people have disengaged. So maybe their job is not only just as much to inform, but to dissuade from people from lining up. We don't have a 24-hour news cycle. I'm sorry, we don't. I just don't think that there's 24 hours worth of news in every single day.
Oh, that's absolutely true. We don't.
So we just have people reporting on things now ad nauseum without a pause for a second, not for a second. And I think that it is dangerous because you can see what happens. Up until the election, the entire world was on fire about what was going to happen and if there was going to be interference, and we had to hear about how there was previously interference. And now we're literally looking at a process where we have ties between foreign delegations, or foreign entities, I won't say delegations, foreign entities that have now tangential and close ties to members of Congress and children and access points to those of Congress and of the political perspective. And it's kind of not the thing that it was before. And we actually have evidence now. I didn't know this, but the original red flag that went up as to this tax concern regarding Hunter Biden's exchanges. Do you know where that came from, supposedly?
No, I don't.
I did not know this. I did not know that the original red flag that went up came from his bank. Because there were evidently, and I don't want to get out of my lane on this. The reporting on this seems to be fairly new, and at least to me personally, it's very new. So I want to be careful not to just go throwing out ideas. But what I'm getting at is, in the same way that I'll get notifications from Bank of America if my credit card doesn't operate quickly or something, evidently these red flags went up about these transactions that were taking place.
Yeah, these are OFAC hits. Yeah,
and that's where it came from. So we have evidence. This is not something that just randomly came up from a political realm that we know that came from a fake dossier and all these other things that were going on, or from a generated dossier, we'll say. So I want to make sure that the part that to me is really concerning is the manner that ties into your point. I want to focus it back on that. It's a willful disacknowledgement of what we're seeing because I think people are so exhausted that they literally are at the point that the job has been done. We've burned people out for so long, keeping everything at 100 level, that we don't have to do anything anymore.
Right. No, and I'm trying to remember the name of the book. Hold on. I'm checking it right now. Hold on.
I do want to take a moment here to thank some of our fans for checking in. We want to say hi to you guys out there. And I do want to thank a lot of you for the names you use, because I just off of your names alone, I think we would all be good friends. So a very good welcome to Cheese Freak Ginger Snap. That's a winner right there. I don't even know who that person is. They've already got 5 points in my book. Again, our friend Anthony, I believe it's pronounced Sokamachia. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Mr. D Knuckles back with us again, and a lot of you guys are getting some good quotes, good comments. And after the show last week, we talked about how much we appreciated your guys' engagement. So thank you very much for being here. And as we do on this show, we like to work to bring our fans to either be a part of the show or contribute the way you guys have. So thank you very much for tuning in.
Yes, no, absolutely. And do like and share this video. Because at the end of the day, the only way we're going to win this fight, and I mean, and not just this election or the next election, it's not about elections, it's about winning the overall fight. And it's going to take every single one of us being informed and willing to stand up and make and actually speak our minds. We have to make this argument to our friends, to our neighbors, to our family members. We just have to be out there, and it's only going to happen when they hear voice and time and time again, different voice saying something, so they stop and listen. We have to win this fight. Our nation is worth fighting for. More importantly, we have to remember we have to make this argument. We can't just assume that they automatically agree with us that freedom is a good thing. Freedom itself, liberty itself, is what's under assault, and it's I forget who said it first, but they said that freedom is always only one generation from extinction.
Was that Reagan?
It's possible. I couldn't remember if he was quoting somebody else though. So
yeah, that could be. I think Dennis Prager has one that I like. I don't know if it's from him, but I believe he said man's most natural inclination when presented with absolute freedom is to surrender it.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting point. I do want to say one thing here to this point, and that is something came up earlier tonight, and I was very fascinated by this. And for our listeners out there, both through education and employment, I've had an opportunity to kind of look at some of these things and consider them. But I would say it like I only provide that not because I'm looking for any recognition, but just it's something that has fascinated me for decades. And I would say what's interesting is the concept of how we're shifting, at least in our communication channels, from that of a mass society to that of a networked society. Yeah. I actually think that little channels like this and moving forward, you're depending upon which ones you follow, right? Whether you're a Shapiro guy or a PragerU or a Jordan Peterson, or maybe you go the other way. Maybe you Pod Save America or whatever direction you want to go, an NPR, wherever you are. you're going to tune into those networks and those hubs. And I think it's fascinating because that actually goes back to what I think this country was in a lot of ways, where you had your local, publishers and whatnot. I think the era of sitting in front of a television at 6:30 and listening to Walter Cronkite is over. And I think it's because a lot of that has been destroyed already. I want to go to something actually Mr. Soltomachia said. He said, when we were discussing before about the concept of engagement with the news and those who seek it out, when you were describing your wife, that all they see is truth in that. I think his point is kind of valid here when he says, conversely, others don't believe a word uttered by the mainstream media and don't care any longer what comes out on it. And I think that to that point, the reason that's a very important point right there is because he touches on something that's interesting. And that is the point that I was trying to raise before. Has the mission been accomplished? Have they seeded the thought of discontent enough that now it's about getting people off and out? And I don't mean off because the networks are going to be supported by advertising dollars. I mean, it doesn't, if you come back with truth or policy, it doesn't matter, because the bait that they've already taken is fear bad, Russia, China, spy, election bad, electoral college this, racism through all our institutions, and these entities that now you can't, you know what I mean? Like, if you try to provide something like, as Dan Crenshaw says, and I think it's a fantastic term, and he says he wants to be a rational environmentalist. I think that's fantastic. But it's like these talking points that have just been blown out. It's something something interesting to consider. So again, to Anthony's point, I think it's very fascinating that we consider how people in both directions are going, those that clamor to the word and those that have now fully rejected it. But my question is that part of it? Is that part of it? Is it to push some, put the message in them and then send them out? Don't care that they know what they're saying. Just say it, as Goebbels used to say it loud enough, long enough, large enough to a large enough audience, and a lie becomes a truth.
So to support that theory, in your previous comment about the 24-hour news cycle, I found the book. There's a gentleman, he's a sociologist, I believe, by the name of Somerville, and he wrote a book called "How the News Makes Us Dumb."
I have the book, actually.
Yeah, the death of wisdom in an information society. The thing about his claim, and it's 100% true. It sort of goes back to the old idea: if everything is urgent, then nothing is. We're so compound. There's this constant bombardment of quote unquote news and information. And you get to, it's like you said, there's so much out there, you don't know what to do with it. There's no way to actually sort through it, right? Wisdom is being able to gather this information, make it turn into something useful, and then do something with it. It's all this news all the time. There's no research. There's no context. We don't even know if it's right half the time. In fact, anytime something big happens and people are like, hey, did you hear about this? I'm like, stop. I should tell them, are we in the first 24 hours? They're like, yeah. Then I'm like, don't believe anything you're hearing. Not one thing, because everything is wrong. The first 24 to 48 hours of any news story is wrong. Unless the news story is somebody on camera saying, this is what's happening. Because there's no research and there's definitely no context. Well, if you don't have context for things, then the information you're being given means nothing, because you can't do anything with it. And so I think that was step one: bombard you with so much information that you don't have time to keep track of it all. But now we've come to that point of just there is no more truth. There's just the narrative. Like you said, we can't even stop and agree on, like, is it a day? Is it night? What's male and female? Like we don't even have agreements on these things anymore. And if you can't agree on basic fundamental principles, if you can't even agree on what's actually physically happening around you, then there can be no conversation. And that leaves you with nothing but violence. And that's my great fear. That's my fear of all of this.
Well, it's I want to take a moment again. I want to tie into what our friends of the show are writing in, and there's a good point here. I'm going to go to Anthony's comment here. He says, with regard to this, I wouldn't say disinformation, but an ability to get people to have to sift, through the stuff from the stuff, right? And he writes, he said, yes, their mission is largely accomplished vis-a-vis that goal. You can't find the needle of truth in the stack of news needles. I want to take a quick second here. It reminds me of when I was a kid. We've talked about this on the show before, I believe. There was a book, and I mean elementary school, where there was a young boy who found a leprechaun and found the pot of gold. And it was in this beautiful field of yellow flowers, yellow roses. And he went over and they were talking about how, a leprechaun tricks you and does all these things and what's really important and all this. So the little boy wants to remember where the pot of gold is because he wants to bring this gift to his family and make them wealthy. They were fairly, modest. And so he ties a red ribbon around it, around the flower where the pot of gold was. And when he comes back to tell his parents about everything, he comes back and the leprechaun has tied a red bow around all of the flowers in the entire field. So what he realizes is that he'll never find that pot of gold again, but he can pick these beautiful flowers with these beautiful red bows on them and present them to his mother as a gift of how much he loves her. And therefore you realize what the true treasure really was. I always felt like the kid totally got ripped off. Even in second grade, I was like, come on. But I
never trust the leprechaun.
I bring it up to say, to Anthony's point and to what we're talking about. If you just flood the environment with so much, every needle is another needle, then what is it that you're doing? And if we want to tie it back now with China, all you have to do is say, Eric Swalwell, representative out of California, has it's the definition of a honeypot. I mean, he officially has had ties to a Chinese. It's an infiltration plan. I mean, it's not hard. I mean, it's what you're doing.
Yeah.
You look at, counterintelligence, not even counterintelligence, it's just whatever they're doing, right? And this is how you get these breaches of information and all these things.
But there was breaches, all right.
Yeah, but the point that I'm getting at for our fans tonight, we're going to keep the show PG-13. Also, a quick shout out to one of our fans haven't seen on the show before, but I want to welcome Mary H to the show. Glad you're listening. Welcome aboard. No, I think it's interesting to see as we want to tie this back in with China, which is it's not Eric Swalwell. It's not the billions in corporations. It's not the trade deals. It's not them inking a very lucrative deal with Iraq in terms of gas and pipeline. It's the bigger pictures. It's Russia and China looking at one another and how they're going to build these new types of alliances and things going on. It's why you've now seen things like the United States, even in terms of business. I'll use Apple Computers, the most valuable company in the world, pivoting their position to that of India. So now you've got different countries that are bringing in things in different areas and how we bring them up. So look, if we think that anything happened with Eric Swalwell is new or hasn't been going on for decades, we're just being ignorant. The concern that we have, though, is when Speaker Pelosi thought there was something going on about Donald Trump, this is the grandest assault on the Constitution, that we are in a constitutional crisis and the world is literally on fire, to she doesn't have a problem with it. And I think the concern that we see is that for many people, and his office has just not had any response.
Yeah.
Why would they? Where's the level of accountability going to come from? Where is the fair and unbiased media to hold them accountable?
Well, and there you go. It goes back to this whole.
I mean, the guy's just
right
with having a tie to a Chinese spy, and his response from his office was, "We have no comment." Think about that. We have. You're a parent. We have parents that are on tonight, I'm sure, listening somewhere. If your kid spilled Kool-Aid in their bed, and you were like, "Why did you spill Kool-Aid in your bed?" Imagine your 6-year-old going, "I don't have a comment at this time." And that has nothing to do with the national security of the United States based off of U.S. representatives engaging with Chinese spies. But it works.
Oh, it does. Well, and what I love even more was the fact that he had the audacity to come out and say, well, the real problem here is that somebody leaked that this happened. I mean, I can't imagine having that kind of chutzpah to sit there and look at a camera and say the real problem isn't that I was infiltrated by Chinese spies and that I am on camera being very sympathetic towards China, and that these people, it wasn't just that he was infiltrated, it was that they are basically, she was helping to raise, she basically got him his position. She was the one supplying him money. She was one of his biggest donors, or she quote unquote secured his donors. Like, this is big. He owes China. He knows he owes China. That's why he's always been soft on China. And he's on camera being soft on China. And from what they've told us, he's on camera a lot more than that. But it goes back to, he's got this. This is obvious. We know this has occurred. And yet, there is no one who's willing to call him out. And they just throw it out there. He gets his one stupid line in about, well, the real problem here is that you caught me. And that's probably illegal. And the news media's response is, yep, back to you, Bill.
Right. Can your tap water kill you? Tune in at 10. Hey, I want to do something. You mentioned a line before, and we've got some listeners on here on our comments, and I've really appreciated watching this aspect grow. So I'm talking now to our listeners directly, and I really want to take this moment. Earlier in the show, Alex mentioned, if we're going to win this fight, and the thought that came, and he was like, and I don't just mean this election, I don't just mean Georgia, I don't just mean the Senate. I don't want to ask Alex right now. What I want to do is kick it out to you guys. If you'd write in the comment section if you'd like, what does it mean? What is, the first tactic in military operation is identify the objective, right? Identify what the mission is. So I'm going to kick it out to you guys out there, and I'm going to ask the question: what is the objective? When Alex and I talk about this show, one thing we've always come back to is we want it to serve a purpose. We want it to have an objective. Now, there are things that we care about and things that we want, of course, and we're going to, bring that through production. But in sharing with you guys, I would like to kick it out to the peanut gallery. And you can answer now if you'd like. You don't have to. You can private chat or reach us any way you'd like. But if you do feel comfortable on this section comments here, and we can talk about it, what does that mean? What does it mean to win, to fight this war, to win? What does victory look like? What is it that we are striving with purpose to do right now? Is it just to secure a seat? Is it to secure a Republican majority? Is it to secure a conservative way of life? Is it to secure truth and reaffirm justice and balance and faith in our electoral system? What is it to do for you? And I'm asking for your guys' opinion, not ours. What is it for you that this show brings? Because I would like for this show to be representative of not only a varied spectrum of ideas, but a show that is also engaged with its listener base. So if you guys that are out there right now, if you have any ideas or any thoughts as to what you see sharing with the show, as to what it is that it means to, what is the objective and how do we get to that objective? I'd be very interested to listen to your input.
And that's a great sort of question to end on. And everyone, feel free to, comment even after the episode is ended. So, because we still get those comments, and really, that's really a great thing to sort of maybe game out next episode, because outside, again, we both live in Texas. It is hard to know what we're supposed to be doing right now, because I'm not an attorney working for the AG's office. We're already on board with this. Everyone that I know in the government that I would be voting for or have any direct contact with, they're all on board with this. So it's like, what are those things that we can and should be doing? I know that we said in the beginning, and we've always said, you have to be involved with your local politics. I think what this has really shown is, if you're not involved with local politics, that's how this works. Everything's local. The power to affect your life is always local. We have to focus on local politics first and not sideline national politics, but we can't focus on it. If we all took control of our local politics and we got involved and actually solved the problems in our own lives first, I think we put national politics where it should be, which is secondary. I think we'd actually get somewhere. But I mean, even how to do that, how to advocate for it, even I'm a little lost on that. So I think we'd love to see your answers, your questions, your thoughts. Let's game this out, because I think that there's a million answers out there, and maybe we need 1,000,001. But I don't think we're ever going to come to it unless we actually ask the questions and communicate with one another.
Yeah, and I think that if there's anything that we wanted to start with the show all the time, think globally, act locally, right? I mean, and I'm ripping that off completely. That's everywhere. But what I'm getting at is maybe we have this platform. This platform can be global, but maybe we want to act locally. That's why I want to bring in our listener base. Maybe that's the unique element. I mean, guys, you're seeing live production right now. This is what a live recording does. It breeds ideas in real time. You guys are going to be part of this. And it's important to us because we want to make sure that we're not just yelling into the void. There's enough of those shows out there. And we've tried to take this on step by step and build it and I want to credit this to Alex and his passion and his engagement. It's been an honor to work with him on this, and it's been a really, really fun time to build something that's getting there. And you guys are the reason that we're doing this. If the two of us wanted to just talk to each other, we would just call and just rant over the phone. But the fact that we have you guys out there, I'd rather build a strong base of a handful of people that are engaged than have drones of drones.
Well, hold on. Would those drones would those be military drones? Would they be armed? Because I can think of some really cool things to do with a couple Predator drones that are fully armed. I'm just saying.
I'm just thinking about the little kid in me that loved radio control airplanes and cars and everything. I didn't have a whole lot of luck with them, so I'm pretty sure the government would let me fly them because as my record stands, my longest flight was about 9.5 seconds. Took about 4 months to build and about 9.5 seconds to take apart. But what I would say is this, as we end tonight, there's always something else coming. We've got the court cases that are coming down. We've got investigations now coming down with Joe Biden's brother, Joe Biden's son, these things. The question becomes, thinking for the longer term, what happens if the Republicans hold the Senate and then the Republicans pick up seats in the House in 2024, 2022? What happens? Do you just start, and I mean legitimately, do you start impeaching people? We need to think about what's going on. That's why we want you guys. Both of us I know on the show are very open to hearing what you think about that. What does it mean for the welfare of our victory or for the welfare of our citizenry, the welfare of our country, and most importantly, the welfare of the ideals with which we have pledged to one another as contained in that of the Constitution of the United States? And so we're interested to hear your guys' feedback. And as always, most importantly, I hope everybody is safe. We will be here next week, but as we get into the holidays, we are going to give you guys a break. But we do wish everybody a very Merry Christmas early from the show. And Alex, you want to take us off?
Absolutely. Thank you to everyone who's listening. And I don't know why you're putting up with us, but we appreciate that you are. And we'll be, like you said, we'll be here next week. We appreciate y'all. And just let's take ownership in our own lives. Let's remember that no one is actually going to. No one in leadership is going to care for you as much as you are. No one's going to care for your family as much as you are. And no one's going to have as much power in your life than you are. You are powerful. You can do anything. Don't let the world tell you otherwise. We'll see y'all next week.